Welcome back, everyone. For this deep dive, we're jumping headfirst into Edward Ashton's Mickey 7.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, a listener suggested we check it out. And, well, it did not disappoint. This sci-fi novel throws us into a future where humanity is out there colonizing distant planets.
Classic sci-fi setup.
Totally. But here's the twist. To handle all the super dangerous, often deadly missions they create, expendables. Clones basically designed for tasks, that no one else wants to touch.
Wow, so they're like disposable.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting. The book dives into what happens when one of these expendables, Mickey 7, starts questioning his whole existence.
Okay, I see where this is going. The ethical dilemmas start piling up.
You got it. It's like Ashton's holding up a mirror to our own society, making us ask some tough questions about how we value life and who we consider expendable.
Heavy stuff. But before we get too deep into those ethical waters, maybe we should set the scene for our listeners.
Absolutely. So picture this. A brutal ice planet called Niflheim. It's harsh, unforgiving, survival's a constant battle.
Sounds lovely.
Right. And who do they send out to face the dangers? Our main guy, Mickey 7. He's the current expendable, the 7th iteration, to be exact.
So what, he just goes on these suicide missions all the time?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But here's the kicker. When Mickey dies, which happens a lot, he's regenerated. All his memories get downloaded into a fresh new body.
So it's like death is just a reset button.
You could say that. But imagine constantly reliving your own death over and over. The psychological toll has got to be intense.
That's where the real horror of this system comes in, right? It's not just the physical danger, but also the emotional and psychological trauma.
Exactly. And that's where this exploration of identity really takes center stage. Like, what even makes Mickey Mickey? Is it just his memories? Or is there something more to him that transcends those downloaded experiences?
It's a fascinating question, and I'm guessing the book really throws us into that existential crisis.
Oh, absolutely. Things get even more complicated when Mickey 7 stumbles upon his previous iteration, Mickey 6.
Wait, so there are two of them now?
Yep. And they have to keep it a secret because the society on Niflheim has some pretty strict rules about multiples.
So not only are they dealing with dangerous missions and the whole existential crisis thing, but they also have to live in secrecy and fear of being discovered.
Exactly. It throws a massive wrench into the whole system of expendables. And just to add another layer of complexity, Mickey 7 starts forming relationships with others on Niflheim.
Relationships. How does that even work when you're essentially disposable?
That's a great question. He connects with Nasha, the communications expert. Their bond brings a sense of normalcy, even love, into this chaotic world.
Sounds almost impossible in that kind of environment.
Right. And then there's Berto, the pilot, a bit of a wild card, loves the risk. He brings this camaraderie to the mix, a sense of recklessness that kind of balances out Mickey 7's more cautious personality.
It's like despite the danger and uncertainty, these relationships become a driving force for Mickey 7.
Exactly. They give him something to fight for, a reason to question a system that views him as nothing more than a replaceable asset. And let's not forget about Kat.
Who's Kat?
She's the security officer. And initially, she's super suspicious of Mickey, especially with the whole multiple thing going on.
Understandable, given the colony's rules.
Totally. But she eventually becomes a crucial ally. These connections with Nasha, Berto, and Kat, they really highlight Mickey 7's character development.
So we see him transform from just accepting his fate as an expendable to actually questioning the whole system.
Exactly. As the story progresses, and he goes on more missions, forms these bonds, and grapples with the whole Mickey 6 situation, he starts seeing the cracks in this society. The ethics, the morality of it all start to weigh on him.
He's waking up, realizing he's more than just a cog in a machine.
Precisely. And that's where we really start to dive into those deep existential questions. What makes us human? What defines our identity? How much control do we have over our own lives?
And I'm sure the novel doesn't offer easy answers.
You're right. It's a complex exploration of what it means to exist in a world where life and death, identity and purpose are all constantly being challenged. But before we get too philosophical, maybe we should take a closer look at those moral dilemmas the book throws at us. Like, what are your thoughts on the ethics of cloning for dangerous tasks, especially within this expendable system?
It's definitely pushing the boundaries. Creating beings solely to put them in harm's way, to risk and often lose their lives, raises some serious ethical questions. Is sacrificing a clone for the so-called greater good of the colony even justifiable? What rights and protections should these clones have?
And these questions aren't just confined to the fictional world of Mickey 7. It's making me think about how we treat essential workers in our own society, putting them at risk, yet often undervaluing their contributions. Or soldiers sent to fight in wars. It's like, who gets to decide whose life is expendable?
It's a chilling parallel, and the novel really forces us to confront those uncomfortable truths.
It's like Ashton's using science fiction as a tool to examine those very real anxieties we have about exploitation and the value of life. And that brings us to the broader themes woven throughout Mickey 7: identity, survival, and expendability.
Those are some heavy hitters, and it feels like they're all so intertwined.
Absolutely. Mickey 7's struggle to define his identity is directly linked to his expendability. He's constantly facing death, which challenges his sense of self, his place in the world.
And then there's survival, not just for Mickey 7, but for the entire colony on Niflheim. It makes you question the lengths people will go to ensure their own survival, the compromises they might make.
And whether those compromises are ever truly justified.
Right. The book also delves into power dynamics and social hierarchies. Who gets to decide who's expendable? And what happens when those deemed expendable start fighting back, demanding recognition, demanding their own humanity?
It's like a challenge to look at our own societal structures and consider who we're marginalizing, who we're deeming expendable in our own world.
It's a powerful message, and Ashton doesn't shy away from exploring these themes through vivid imagery and key moments in the novel, like Mickey 7's journey through those treacherous ice tunnels. It's not just a thrilling action sequence, but also a metaphor for his journey of self-discovery.
I love those layers of meaning he weaves into the plot, like the symbolism of the spaceship repair. It's not just about fixing a physical breach, right?
It represents something deeper about Mickey 7 himself. He's not just repairing the ship, he's trying to mend his own fractured sense of self.
Trying to find wholeness while existing in a system that tells him he's disposable. It's brilliant.
And then there's the recurring motif of the ship of Theseus.
Oh yeah, that classic philosophical thought experiment.
Exactly. If you gradually replace all the parts of a ship, is it still the same ship? It's a perfect metaphor for Mickey 7, who's constantly being reborn into a new body. Is he still the same Mickey after each rebirth?
It makes you question the very essence of identity, especially when bodies can be recreated and memories can be transferred.
And it all points back to the novel's larger commentary on humanity.
So what do you think Ashton is trying to say about us, about our humanity?
Well, I think one of the things that really hits you about Mickey 7 is its warning about technology. We're so caught up in what we can do that we don't always stop to think about the should we, you know?
Like, just because we can clone people doesn't mean we should. Right.
Right.
And if we do, how do we treat them? What are our responsibilities?
It's a slippery slope, and the book highlights how any system that creates a pecking order of who matters more can lead to exploitation.
And we see that happening in our world already, don't we? Look at essential workers. They're putting themselves out there, risking their health, and yet they're often overlooked and undervalued. Or think about soldiers. They're putting their lives on the line. Makes you think, who decides who's expendable, and is it ever fair?
It's unsettling how the book mirrors those real-life situations.
Totally. And I think that's what makes Mickey 7 so thought-provoking. It forces us to confront those uncomfortable parallels, to question our own systems and values. But it's not all doom and gloom. Amidst all the darkness and moral dilemmas, there are these glimmers of hope, like Mickey 7's relationships, for example.
You're right. His connection with Nasha really stands out. It shows how, even in a world that seems determined to strip away our humanity, the need for connection, for love, persists.
It almost seems like a rebellion against the whole expendable system. Here's this clone meant to be disposable, forming a deep bond with another person. It throws the whole premise into question.
It really makes you think about the nature of love. Can you truly love someone who could be replaced, in theory, at any moment?
Wow, that's a tough one. And it's not just his romantic relationship with Nasha that challenges this notion of disposable life. His friendship with Berto does too.
Yeah, Berto's such a fascinating character. He's reckless, impulsive, the total opposite of Mickey 7. And yet, they form this genuine bond based on trust and shared experiences.
It shows that friendship can flourish in the most unexpected places, even in a world as harsh and unforgiving as Niflheim. And let's not forget about Kat, the security officer who initially viewed Mickey with suspicion because of the whole multiple situation.
Their relationship highlights how fear and prejudice can be overcome through understanding. At first, Kat represents the colony's fear of the unknown, the disruption of order. But as she gets to know Mickey, she starts to question her assumptions.
It's a small act of rebellion, defying societal norms in favor of compassion. And that theme of rebellion really escalates with the introduction of the antimatter bomb.
Oh yeah, that throws everything into chaos. For those who haven't read the book, the colony's leader, Marshall, is determined to eliminate what he sees as a threat, the alien creatures they've encountered.
Right, he sees them as a danger and decides to use Mickey-7 as a pawn in his plan.
Basically sending him on a suicide mission to plant this incredibly dangerous antimatter bomb in the aliens' tunnels. Talk about risky.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, things don't go as planned.
Not at all. The new Mickey, Mickey-8, ends up getting captured by the aliens before he can detonate the bomb. So now the colony is facing the possibility of these creatures having access to a weapon of mass destruction, all because of Marshall's fear and prejudice.
It's a classic example of how fear-based decisions can backfire spectacularly. His need to eliminate the perceived threat leads to choices that put the entire colony in jeopardy.
And it speaks to the book's exploration of power dynamics and the abuse of authority. Marshall represents a system that prioritizes control above all else, even individual lives and ethical considerations.
So after all this chaos and tension, where does Ashton leave us? Without giving away too much for those who haven't read it, what's the overall impact of Mickey-7?
I'd say the ending is thought-provoking. It leaves you with this sense of unease, but also a glimmer of hope. Mickey-7's resilience, his determination to forge his own path, even against impossible odds, speaks to the strength of the human spirit.
It's like a reminder that even when everything seems designed to break us, we still have the capacity for agency, for hope, for choosing our own destiny.
And I think Mickey-7's popularity and the conversations it's sparking are a positive sign. It shows there's a growing interest in stories that grapple with the ethics of technology and its impact on humanity.
It's like science fiction is evolving, moving beyond just escapism to tackle real-world issues, challenge our assumptions, and make us think critically about the future we're creating.
Absolutely. And for our listener who suggested this book, I think Mickey-7 has achieved what great science fiction aims for. It's entertained, challenged our perspectives, and left us with a lot to consider.
So for those listening, what can you take away from our deep dives into Mickey-7? What questions or reflections do you have as you continue reading?
Well, it makes you think,
Yeah.
about the choices we make as individuals, as a society. Like, what are we willing to sacrifice for progress, for survival? At what point does it become too much?
Yeah, it really gets you thinking about how we treat people who are different, people we might see as, I don't know, expendable.
Exactly. It's like a call for empathy, to look
Yeah.
beyond the labels and see that shared humanity in everyone.
It's like even in this crazy world of clones and space travel, those core values, compassion, connection, respect, they still matter.
And it reminds us that we have a say in how the future unfolds. It's not set in stone. We make choices every day that shape what's to come.
Yeah, a call to action almost. To be aware of the consequences of our actions, to strive for a future where technology benefits everyone, not just a select few.
And beyond the thought-provoking stuff, Mickey-7 is just a fun read. Ashton's got this great way of writing, witty and engaging, even when dealing with some pretty dark themes.
Oh, for sure. It's a great blend of humor and suspense. Keeps you on the edge of your seat, but you also find yourself laughing at the absurdity of it all.
And the characters, despite being in this futuristic world, they feel so real, so human.
You can't help but root for Mickey-7. He's the ultimate underdog,
Yeah.
fighting against a system that's trying to dehumanize him.
And that's what resonates with people, I think. That reminder that even when things seem impossible, there's always room for hope, for resistance, for the human spirit to shine through.
And the fact that this book has sparked so many discussions, it shows that people are hungry for stories that delve into these complex issues, the ethics of technology, the future of humanity.
It proves that science fiction isn't just about escaping reality. It's about using imagination to explore what it means to be human in a world that's changing faster than ever.
So, to our listener who recommended Mickey-7, thank you. It's been a fantastic deep dive exploring this world of expendable clones, ethical dilemmas, and the power of the human spirit.
We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. And for those listening, if you're intrigued, pick up a copy of Mickey-7 and dive in.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.